The deep space radar station floated silently in the cold darkness of space. It was one of Earth's first lines of defense, scanning for anything unusual. Inside the control room, glowing screens displayed endless data, and the soft hum of machinery filled the air. Commander Ethan Kane stood in front of the main monitor, his sharp eyes scanning the readings. He had been in the military for over 15 years, and in that time, he had seen many things, but something felt wrong tonight. Then it happened. A loud beep echoed through the control room. Red warning lights flashed, painting the walls in a deep, pulsing glow. The radar screen showed an unidentified object moving fast, too fast. Unknown warship detected. The AI system, Sentinel-9, announced in a calm voice. Incoming vessel. Estimated size, twice the mass of a human battleship. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He tapped his communicator. Command, we have a situation. Within seconds, Admiral Selena Graves appeared on the screen. Her face was calm but serious, her sharp blue eyes fixed on Ethan. Report. Admiral, Ethan said, we have an unknown warship approaching Sector Orion 7. It's big, and it's moving fast. Selena didn't flinch. Alien origin. Sentinel-9's robotic voice responded, confirmed. No known human technology matches its signature. For a moment, there was silence. A warship, not human, headed straight for them. Ethan turned to his officers. What's the warship's course? The radar operator's voice was shaky. It's coming. Directly toward Earth's defense line. Admiral Graves leaned forward. They're not stopping. Negative. Sentinel-9 confirmed. No response to hails. No signs of slowing down. Ethan's stomach tightened. This was bad. Really bad. Selena made her decision. Alert all defense stations. Scramble the fleet. Ethan nodded and pressed a red button on the console. The station's alarm blared, and every soldier snapped to action. Across the sector, human warships came to life, their engines roaring, weapons powering up. The fleet was mobilizing. But would it be enough? Minutes passed. The warship was getting closer. Every screen showed its enormous size, its dark hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Then something terrifying happened. The ship sent a signal, not a greeting, not a request for communication. It was a warning. A deep, eerie voice echoed through every human channel. Surrender or be destroyed. The control room went silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Ethan clenched his fists. So this was it. The aliens weren't here to talk. They were here to conquer. Admiral Graves' voice was ice cold. Tell them, she said, humanity doesn't surrender. A technician sent the reply. No answer came back. But the enemy ship sped up. They're charging weapons. An officer shouted. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't just an attack. It was an invasion. On every human warship, captains prepared for battle. Fighter pilots strapped into their ships, engines igniting. The mighty battlecruiser Titan's Wrath, Earth's largest warship, powered up its main cannons. And then, the enemy fired first. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the warship's front. It struck one of Earth's outpost stations. The entire structure exploded in seconds, turned to dust. Gasps filled the command center. Ethan's heart pounded. One shot had erased an entire station. We can't let them get any closer, he said through gritted teeth. Open fire. Everything we've got. Across the fleet, railguns, plasma cannons, and torpedoes launched into space. Explosions filled the dark void. Some hit the enemy ship, making small dents in its hull. But it wasn't enough. The warship kept coming. Ethan's voice was steel. If we don't stop them now, Earth is next. Admiral Graves nodded. Then we fight. The battle had begun. The tension in the control room was suffocating. The warning had been sent, and Earth's fleet was preparing for the worst, but nothing could have prepared them for the sheer size and firepower of the enemy warship. The screens flickered as the unknown ship drew nearer, its shadow growing larger with every passing second. It was like a predator hunting its prey, and humanity was the target. Ethan Kane stood at the command center, his fists clenched at his sides. He could feel his pulse pounding in his ears. The warship wasn't slowing down. It was as if it had no fear, no hesitation, and that terrified him more than anything. "Status," he barked, his voice sharp as a knife. He had to keep calm, but the weight of the situation pressed down on him like 100 tons. "Nothing, sir," replied Lieutenant Carter, the radar technician. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. "The enemy ship isn't responding to our signals. It's still on its trajectory. No deviation, no change in course." "Is it still charging weapons?" Ethan asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, sir," came the quiet response. "The energy signatures are overwhelming. Whatever they've got, it's unlike anything we've ever seen." Ethan took a deep breath. He had faced many battles in his career, but this felt different. This felt like humanity was up against something far beyond its capabilities. The alien warship was massive, far more advanced than anything Earth's fleet had ever encountered. The warship's power was immense, and they hadn't even seen it fight yet. Earth's best technology wasn't enough to even scratch the surface of it. Admiral Selena Graves' face appeared on the holocom. Her expression was calm, but the determination in her eyes was clear. "Ethan, I've just been briefed," she said, her voice steady. "The warship is not alone. This is just the vanguard. A larger fleet is not far behind. It's only a matter of time before they arrive." Ethan felt a chill creep up his spine. They had only just detected the warship, and already reinforcements were on the way. He glanced at the screens. The enemy ship wasn't even in range yet, but it was already making its presence known. "Do we have any chance of stopping them?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Selena paused for a moment. "Not without a miracle, Ethan, but we've faced impossible odds before. I know you're ready. Earth's fleet is prepared. We just have to hold them off long enough to make a move." Ethan nodded, a sense of purpose flooding through him. He turned back to his team. "Prepare to engage," he ordered. "We're not going down without a fight." The fleet moved into position. Earth's best ships, heavily armed and prepared for war, formed a defensive line. There was no turning back now. They had no choice but to face this unknown enemy head-on. "All ships, target their weak spots," Ethan commanded. "Focus fire on the midsection. We need to find a breach." The battle began with a violent roar as every human warship opened fire. The enemy ship took hit after hit, but to Ethan's shock, it didn't even flinch. It was like the warship was built to withstand anything they threw at it. The energy shields rippled as they absorbed each blast, the surface shimmering with a strange, unnatural light. The human fleet's best weapons were nothing more than a nuisance to the alien vessel. "Return fire. Keep attacking," Ethan shouted, his frustration building. Their weapons were ineffective, and the enemy warship didn't seem to care. Every minute wasted brought them closer to the deadly unknown. And then it happened. The enemy ship retaliated. A brilliant beam of energy erupted from the warship's forward cannon, striking one of Earth's cruisers dead on. The ship buckled under the force, its hull buckling as the beam drilled into it. For a brief moment, there was a flash of blinding light, and then the cruiser exploded into a cloud of debris. A horrifying silence followed, broken only by the ringing in Ethan's ears. It was one ship down, and no one knew how many more could be lost before the battle was over. "Holy hell," muttered one of the officers, his eyes wide in disbelief. Ethan's voice cut through the shock. "Keep pushing forward. All units, engage." But it was too late. The enemy was proving their superiority, and Earth was losing the fight before it had even begun. As the seconds ticked by, a sinking feeling grew inside Ethan. They were outmatched, outgunned, and if they couldn't find a way to fight back soon, humanity would be nothing more than another casualty in this galaxy-wide war. Ethan, we need to come up with something fast. Selena's voice crackled through his earpiece. If we don't stop them now, Earth will fall. Ethan's mind raced. He needed a plan, a miracle. But what could they do? What weapon could possibly match the power of this alien warship? As the enemy warship fired again, cutting through another cruiser with ease, Ethan realized something. There was one chance, one last option, but it was risky. And if it didn't work, Earth's fleet would be annihilated. He didn't have time to think. It had to work. He gave the order. Activate the Titan Spear. The Titan Spear, the last hope of humanity. A secret weapon. The human fleet's only chance at survival. Would it be enough? Could they take down a warship that could destroy their best ships with a single shot? The clock was ticking, and Earth's fate hung in the balance. The battle raged on, and the atmosphere in the control room had shifted from tense anticipation to sheer panic. The fleet was losing ground. The alien warship had already taken out two of Earth's most powerful cruisers with ease. The sound of explosions reverberated through the station as every officer frantically worked to keep their ships in the fight. Ethan stood at the center, his mind racing. They were outgunned, outclassed, and yet the fight wasn't over. Not yet. "Commander, the Titan Spear is online," came the voice of Lieutenant Carter, his tone laced with both relief and fear. "We're ready for launch." Ethan's pulse quickened. The Titan Spear was humanity's last hope. It was the most advanced weapon ever created, a long-range, planet-destroying missile designed to pierce even the toughest alien armor. But it came with a catch. It was only capable of one shot. If they missed, if it didn't penetrate the enemy's defenses, Earth would be left completely vulnerable. He glanced at the screen in front of him. The warship, still advancing relentlessly, was within range. The fleet had tried everything. Railguns, plasma cannons, even torpedoes, but nothing worked. The alien vessel seemed to be immune to Earth's best weapons. "Send the Titan Spear," Ethan said, his voice steady, but inside, his mind was clouded with doubt. They had no other choice. The missile launched from the ship's silo with a burst of fire and light, cutting through the vacuum of space. It was a sleek, deadly projectile, its design reflecting humanity's greatest engineering achievements. The missile streaked toward the alien warship, and for a brief moment, everything seemed to slow down. Ethan watched the trajectory on the screen, his breath held tight in his chest. But then, nothing. A sudden, unexpected surge of energy surrounded the warship. The Titan Spear, moving at blistering speed, collided with an invisible force field. The missile exploded on impact, its power dissipating into the void with little more than a spark. The warship didn't even flinch. Ethan's heart sank. "That's it," he muttered. "We're done." The words barely left his mouth when the warship responded. Its massive guns opened fire, sending a stream of destructive energy toward Earth's fleet. The energy beams lashed out like the claws of a cosmic beast, raking across the human ships with terrifying precision. The Titan Spear had failed. And now, the enemy was coming for them. "Evasive maneuvers," Ethan shouted, his voice sharp with urgency. "Get our ships out of the line of fire." But it was too late. The first blast hit another cruiser, and it shattered into pieces before anyone had time to react. The flames of the explosion lit up the darkness of space like a dying star. For a moment, there was silence. A heavy, oppressive silence that made it feel like time had stopped. "Commander," came the trembling voice of an officer. They're too powerful. We can't stop them." Ethan's hands clenched into fists, his nails biting into his palms. No, he wouldn't accept it. He couldn't. "Hold your ground," he shouted back. "We will not surrender." But deep inside, even Ethan couldn't deny the sinking feeling that was taking root in his chest. They were out of options. The alien warship was proving to be unstoppable. Their most advanced weapon had failed. The fleet was being torn apart. And soon, Earth itself would be under threat. Then, just as hope seemed to be slipping away, something unexpected happened. The warship, which had been advancing relentlessly, stopped. It wasn't retreating. Not yet. But it paused. For the first time in the battle, it seemed to be assessing Earth's fleet, as though studying them, learning from them. Ethan didn't know what to make of it. Was this some kind of trap, or had they reached a turning point? Commander Kane. Admiral Graves's voice crackled through his earpiece. I've been monitoring the warship's movements. I think they're trying to communicate. Communicate? Ethan repeated, confused. How? I don't know yet, she replied. But whatever it is, it's not hostile. At least not yet. Keep your fleet on alert, but we might have an opportunity here. Ethan hesitated. Was this some sort of trick? Had the enemy realized that Earth wasn't going down as easily as they had hoped? The thought of negotiating with the invaders felt wrong, but if there was a chance, a slim chance to avoid complete destruction, they had to take it. Send out a transmission, Ethan ordered. We'll try to communicate. It wasn't much, but it was the only thing left to do. He hoped against hope that this wouldn't be the last mistake humanity ever made. The transmission went out, but the seconds felt like hours. Time seemed to stretch in the silence that followed. Ethan watched the screen with bated breath. The enemy warship still hovered in the void, seemingly waiting, its weapons powered down for the moment. Finally, a response came through. The voice that answered was deep and cold, speaking a language that was incomprehensible, alien. But then something strange happened. The translation system kicked in, converting the language into English. We are the harbingers. The voice boomed across the comms. You have been judged. You will kneel or face extinction. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. Judged? What did that mean? Kneel? They were asking humanity to submit to them, to surrender completely, to give up everything. Ethan's chest tightened. The situation was growing more dire by the second. But as he looked at the fleet, his mind started to turn. They couldn't kneel. Earth couldn't fall to invaders. They had to resist, no matter what. He wasn't going to let humanity be wiped out, not without a fight. Tell them, he said, his voice low but filled with determination, that humanity will never kneel. And with that, the final battle for Earth began. The stakes were higher than ever before. There was no turning back now. The warship's message had left a chilling silence in its wake. The harsh tone of the harbingers echoed in the minds of every officer, soldier, and civilian who had been privy to the transmission. Kneel or face extinction. The ultimatum was clear, and it was designed to break humanity's resolve, to make them fear the unknown. But Ethan Kane could feel it, deep in his gut. Something inside him stirred, something primal. The fight for survival was far from over. Commander, we've detected a new wave of harbinger ships, came the voice of Lieutenant Carter, breaking the silence. They're approaching fast. This is it. Ethan didn't need to look at the screen to know that the time for hesitation had passed. The harbingers were not interested in conversation or negotiation. They had made their judgment, and it was clear. They wanted Earth to surrender or be destroyed. Reroute all available resources to the remaining fleet. Ethan commanded. We fight. We fight until the last breath. The control room hummed with activity as officers scrambled to relay orders. Outside the station, the Earth fleet was readying itself for the next phase of the battle. There was no fear in the hearts of the soldiers, only determination. Humanity had never faced a threat like this, but they had never backed down from a fight either. As the first wave of harbinger ships moved into range, Ethan's mind raced. They had already learned that conventional weapons, the missiles, railguns, and plasma cannons, were useless against the alien defenses. There had to be another way, some weakness, some flaw that could be exploited. The harbingers weren't invincible. They couldn't be. He quickly called up the data on the Harbingers from the Intel department. The ship's energy shields were nearly impenetrable, their weapons powerful enough to turn Earth's best defenses to dust. But there had to be something. There had to be a way to turn the tide. "Commander," Carter said, his voice shaking slightly, "we've discovered something strange. The Harbingers, their weapons, their shields, they all rely on a specific type of energy. It's not like anything we've seen before, but it's traceable." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Are you telling me we can exploit it?" "I think so," Carter replied. "If we can find the source of that energy signature." The room fell silent, save for the sounds of frantic typing and the hum of the control systems. The seconds felt like hours. Ethan could feel the sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. His mind raced. There had to be a way to win this. The fate of humanity depended on it. Then the breakthrough came. "We've got it," Carter said, his voice full of excitement. "The energy signature is coming from the central command module of the lead Harbinger ship. If we can target it, we can cripple their entire fleet." Ethan's eyes locked onto the screen. The central command module, that was the key. They didn't need to destroy every single ship. They just needed to break the heart of the enemy's operations. "Prepare the fleet for a coordinated strike," Ethan ordered. "We have one shot at this. Make it count." The remaining Earth ships formed up, their weapons primed and ready. The tension in the room was unbearable. Ethan's mind was sharp and focused, but his heart was heavy. They had one chance to change the course of the war. "Lock on target," he muttered under his breath. "Fire." The fleet unleashed everything they had in a single massive barrage. Lasers, missiles, plasma blasts, all aimed at the central command module of the lead Harbinger ship. For a moment, it felt like time stood still. The explosions lit up the dark void of space, like fireworks on a stormy night. But when the dust settled, the Harbinger warship was still there. The shields shimmered, and the module remained intact. "No, no, no, no," Ethan shouted, slamming his fist on the console. It wasn't enough. But just as despair began to take hold, Carter's voice broke through. "Commander, look, the shields are flickering." Ethan looked up, his eyes widening. The barrage had cracked their shields. There was a faint vulnerability. The opening they needed. "Do it again," Ethan said, his voice steady. "All ships fire at the same spot. This time, don't hold back." The fleet took aim once more, and this time, every weapon fired in perfect synchronization. The combined might of Earth's remaining ships struck the command module with full force, overwhelming the weakened shields. A brilliant explosion erupted, sending shockwaves rippling through the alien fleet. The Harbinger flagship trembled. For a moment, it seemed as though the entire fleet was frozen in place, unsure of what had just happened. The once imposing force was now in disarray. The Harbingers were no longer invincible. "We've done it," Carter whispered, disbelief in his voice. "We've actually done it." But as the crew of the fleet dared to hope, Ethan knew one thing for certain. The Harbingers weren't going to let this defeat slide. If they were going to survive, they needed to press the advantage, and quickly, because the real battle was just beginning. The aftermath of the successful strike on the Harbinger flagship sent ripples of shock and disbelief throughout the human fleet. For the first time since the war began, there was a sense of hope in the air. The once unstoppable alien force had faltered. The Harbingers were no longer invincible. Ethan Kane stood in the command center, eyes fixed on the flickering screens before him. He could feel the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. There was no time to bask in victory. This battle was far from over. The Harbingers would regroup, and when they did, they would come back stronger, angrier, and more determined to crush humanity. The only chance for survival was to press the advantage while they still had it. "Commander," Carter's voice broke the silence. "We've got a new development. The Harbingers are pulling back, but they're not retreating. They're recharging their weapons. It looks like they're preparing for a counterattack. Ethan's stomach tightened. How much time do we have? Not long, Carter replied. They're already reconfiguring their fleet for an offensive. It's going to be a full-scale assault. Ethan took a deep breath and turned to the rest of the team. We need to strike now, before they can fully regroup. All ships, get ready. Prepare for a full-on counteroffensive. There was no hesitation. The crew sprang into action, pulling together the remaining fleet's strength and resources. The sense of urgency in the air was palpable. Everyone knew this was their one chance to take down the Harbingers before they could retaliate with full force. If they waited too long, humanity would be back at square one, fighting for survival against an alien force that had proven it could wipe them out in an instant. Outside, the Earth fleet maneuvered into position, taking strategic formations that maximized their defensive capabilities. Each ship had been heavily modified for the battle, outfitted with experimental weapons and energy shields designed to withstand the Harbinger's most powerful strikes. Ethan's fingers hovered over the console as he gave the final order. Target the Harbinger's recharging fleet. Take out their weapons first. If we destroy their ability to retaliate, we can finish this once and for all. Roger that, Commander, came the response. The command was issued, and the fleet launched its assault. Lasers and missiles streaked across the void of space, targeting the alien ship's vulnerable energy cores. But the Harbingers weren't caught off guard. Their fleet had regrouped quickly, and their weapons were firing once more, this time with devastating precision. A burst of plasma energy exploded just past one of the Earth cruisers, sending debris and radiation scattering across space. The Harbinger ships were relentless, pounding away at the human fleet, forcing them to fall back. Ethan's mind raced. The Harbinger's counterattack was fiercer than expected. Humanity was on the defensive once more. His fleet was taking hits, and their shields were starting to buckle under the pressure. They couldn't afford to wait for the shields to fail. They needed to think fast. "Commander," Carter called out, his voice tinged with urgency. "The Harbingers are focusing their fire on our flagship. We need to pull back, or we'll lose our command center." Ethan gritted his teeth. The flagship was the heart of their operation. Losing it would be catastrophic, but retreating now would give the Harbingers the upper hand. "No," Ethan said firmly. "We stand our ground. Prepare the final strike. All ships, aim for the Harbinger flagship's weak point. Target their main reactor. That's the heart of their fleet. If we take it out, we can end this." The tension in the room grew thicker as the orders were given. The final strike had to be perfect. A single miscalculation could mean the end of humanity's struggle for survival. As the ships maneuvered into position, the energy buildup was palpable. The final barrage was being loaded. The Harbinger fleet, sensing the incoming assault, adjusted their formations. They were no longer simply fighting to conquer. They were fighting to survive, to preserve their dominance. Ethan knew that if they failed, the consequences would be irreversible. "Fire!" Ethan shouted. The combined forces of the human fleet unleashed everything they had in a coordinated assault. Missiles, laser beams, and ionized plasma bolts screamed toward the Harbinger flagship, each shot calculated to hit their weak spots. The first wave hit with a resounding explosion, cracking the outer shields, but the flagship held firm. Another volley followed, and this time, the Harbinger flagship's shields began to flicker. The energy core inside began to pulse, unstable, as if it could no longer handle the pressure. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the screens. Every shot mattered now. Every moment was critical. He could feel the fate of Earth resting on his shoulders. "Commander, we're losing power on the flagship," Carter said, his voice grim. "The reactors are overloaded. We've damaged their core." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Keep pushing. We can't stop now." With a final, explosive surge of firepower, the human fleet struck the Harbinger flagship's core. The energy released in a massive, blinding burst. For a brief moment, everything went silent. The flagship's shields collapsed completely, and then, with a violent explosion, the heart of the Harbinger fleet was destroyed. A deafening silence followed, but it wasn't the quiet of victory. The silence was a reminder that the battle was far from over. The Harbinger ships were scattered, and their leadership had crumbled, but there were still countless enemy vessels left. Earth's fleet was battered, its resources dwindling, but they had achieved the impossible. Ethan looked out at the stars, his expression hardening. This is only the beginning. We've struck their heart, but we've only just begun to push back. The Earth fleet may have had the upper hand for now, but the Harbingers were not a force to be underestimated. This was far from the final battle. It was only the first step in a war that would define the future of humanity. And the Harbingers would learn, just as every invader before them had. Earth might be small, but humanity's resolve was unbreakable. The aftermath of the battle was a surreal blend of triumph and fear. Humanity had struck a powerful blow to the Harbinger fleet, but the price was steep. The Earth fleet, battered and bruised, had survived, but their resources were rapidly depleting. The few remaining ships hovered in the emptiness of space, drifting as if waiting for something. The silence in the command center was overwhelming, as though the crew was holding their collective breath, waiting for the next inevitable move from the Harbingers. Ethan Kane stood before the massive windows of the flagship's bridge, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. His hands were clenched into fists, his jaw set with determination. He had seen countless battles in his career, but this war felt different. The Harbingers weren't just another enemy. They were a force unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Intelligent, merciless, and capable of striking down entire fleets in moments, they were a threat on a scale no one could have imagined. "Commander, we've received a transmission from Earth Command." Carter's voice broke through Ethan's thoughts, pulling him back to the present. "They're asking for an update. What's our next move?" Ethan exhaled slowly and turned to face his team. His expression was unreadable, but inside, the weight of the decision ahead pressed heavily on him. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. "Tell them we're not backing down. We need reinforcements. Tell Earth Command to send everything they've got. The Harbingers will regroup, and we need to be ready when they do." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but no one questioned the order. The reality was that humanity had no choice. Retreat wasn't an option. The Harbingers had learned to adapt quickly, and they would undoubtedly retaliate in full force. They had already taken one heavy blow. If humanity could find a way to exploit that weakness, they might just have a chance at winning. But they needed to act fast, before the enemy could heal. Carter typed rapidly on his console, sending the message to Earth Command. Ethan watched, his mind running through the possibilities. The Harbingers had lost their flagship, their central command vessel. The destruction of that ship had disrupted their control, leaving them scattered and vulnerable. But how long would that last? The silence in the room deepened, as if everyone could feel the tension mounting. It was the calm before the storm. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. Finally, Carter turned back to face Ethan, his face grim. "We've got reinforcements coming, but it's going to take time. The nearest fleet is 3 days out, and we don't have that kind of time." Ethan nodded, his mind already racing for a solution. They had to hold the line. He had to hold the line. "Get me the rest of our fleet," he ordered. "We're going to take the fight to them. It's the only way we can prevent them from regrouping." The tension in the air was thick, but the crew rallied around their commander. They had seen the devastation the Harbingers could unleash, and they knew the risks of this mission. But the call to fight was undeniable. Humanity's survival was at stake. The fleet began to reposition, ready to leave the relative safety of their formation and engage the Harbingers head-on. The ships, though damaged, were still formidable. The human spirit was stronger than any physical wound, and their desire to protect Earth outweighed their fear. As the fleet moved forward, Ethan found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. It had all started with a small scout ship, a mission to investigate what was thought to be a minor alien encounter. That single moment had led to a full-scale war, one that had tested humanity's limits. Now the fight for survival had become the fight for the future of all mankind. Ethan knew this was not just about defeating the Harbingers. It was about sending a message to every other alien species out there. Earth wasn't just a speck in the universe. It was a force to be reckoned with. The ships reached the edge of the Harbinger territory, where the stars seemed to stretch endlessly into the void. And then, as if summoned by the thought, a shadow appeared in the distance. At first, it was just a small blip on the radar, too small to be significant. But within moments, the scanners began to pick up more. More blips, larger now. The Harbingers hadn't retreated. They were regrouping, assembling a fleet. The tension returned to the room like a bolt of lightning. "They're back," Carter muttered. "And they're bringing everything they have." Ethan's eyes narrowed. The enemy was ready to fight. But so were they. "Prepare for battle," Ethan said, his voice unwavering. "This time, we don't run. We push forward. Earth's future is on the line." The crew took their positions, moving with practiced efficiency. The fleet was smaller now, but it was stronger, more unified. The ships were battle-worn, but they had tasted victory. And that taste was all they needed to know that they could win again. They had defeated the Harbinger flagship. Now they had to destroy their will to fight. The first wave of Harbinger ships came into view, their dark forms ominous against the backdrop of distant stars. The battle had begun. The war for humanity's future had reached its most critical point. Ethan stood tall, his fingers gripping the armrests of his command chair, his gaze locked on the screens. It was no longer just about survival. It was about proving that humanity would not bend, would not break. They had faced the darkness, and they had survived. Now they would bring the fight to the Harbingers, with everything they had. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about making sure the universe knew. Humanity would fight back, and they would never stop. The clash between the remnants of humanity's fleet and the Harbingers was far from the simplistic story of one side overpowering the other. It was a battle of wills, a test of who could endure, who could outlast the other. As the Harbinger warships surged forward with terrifying speed, their dark silhouettes blotting out the stars, the human ships moved into formation, ready for the most intense confrontation they had ever faced. Ethan stood at the helm of the flagship, his expression hardened, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a physical force. The air in the command center was thick with anticipation, the only sound the low hum of the ship's engines and the faint beeping of status updates on the console. The calm before the storm had settled in, a feeling that every soldier, every crew member, could sense deep in their bones. "Targeting systems are locked," Carter announced, his voice steady but with a hint of strain. "We've got multiple Harbinger ships heading our way, but they're scattered. This might be our best chance." Ethan nodded, his gaze fixed on the enemy fleet. They had underestimated the Harbingers before. Now they couldn't afford that mistake again. The Harbingers, though initially stunned by humanity's first strike, had evolved rapidly in their tactics. Their ships had become more advanced, more coordinated. It was clear they were no longer just invaders. They were now desperate. Desperate to crush humanity before they could fully recover. And desperation made them dangerous. "Hold steady," Ethan commanded, his voice a calm contrast to the turbulence of the situation. "Prepare the weapons. We're going to make every shot count." Outside the windows, the Harbinger ships closed in, their engines glowing bright against the blackness of space. They moved in coordinated formations, their presence an imposing display of alien power. Humanity's fleet, though smaller, was determined. And in a strange way, that was their greatest strength. They didn't have the sheer numbers the Harbingers did, but they had heart, the will to fight for a future that was theirs to protect. The first salvo rang out like thunder. Humanity's weapons, though powerful, had always been a fraction behind in technology compared to their enemies. But that didn't mean they lacked innovation. Each shot, each missile, each blast from their energy cannons had been carefully calculated, designed not just to damage, but to disable, to weaken, to create openings. The first Harbinger ship exploded in a burst of blinding light, its wreckage drifting into the void. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he knew better than to feel hope yet. The Harbingers were not the kind of enemy who would retreat after a single loss. In fact, they were the opposite: calculated, ruthless, and relentless. "Shields are holding steady," Carter said, his voice more measured now. "But they're adapting. They're deploying decoys, sending in smaller ships to overwhelm us." Ethan's mind raced. They had anticipated this, but it wasn't enough to simply defend. They had to go on the offensive. The key to winning this battle was making sure the Harbingers never had the chance to regroup, to rebuild their strength. The one thing they could count on was that the Harbingers, no matter how powerful, weren't immune to tactics that caught them off guard. "Launch all remaining fighters," Ethan ordered. "Target their smaller ships. We're going to blind them with speed and precision." The fighter pilots, already on high alert, immediately sprang into action. The sleek human craft shot from the fleet, weaving through space with nimbleness that was almost unnatural. The Harbinger's smaller ships were numerous, but they weren't designed for maneuverability. They were heavy, bulky, and lacked the agility that humans had mastered in their ships. Humanity's fleet might not have had the largest arsenal, but they made up for it with superior tactics. The human fighters danced around the Harbinger decoys, their weapons letting loose rapid bursts of laser fire that sliced through the alien ships. Each explosion sent ripples of light through the void, signaling victory, but only in small increments. They were getting somewhere. But the enemy still wasn't faltering. The Harbingers were relentless, constantly shifting their positions, adapting to every human countermeasure with terrifying speed. The flagship's hull shuddered as another blast from the Harbingers hit its shields. Ethan's eyes flickered to the damage report, but there was no time for concern. The crew was working at a fever pitch, their training taking over as they operated the ship with seamless efficiency. Then, through the chaos, Ethan's eyes caught something on the scanner: a new formation, a larger Harbinger warship, more powerful and lethal than anything they had seen before. Its engines flared brighter than anything the fleet had encountered, and its weapon systems were clearly designed to wipe out anything in their path. This was no longer a skirmish. This was the Harbinger's final push. They were throwing everything into this battle, desperate to crush humanity once and for all. "They're bringing in their flagship," Carter's voice was grave. "We need to act fast, or they'll wipe us out." Ethan's hand tightened around the armrest. He had been expecting this, but now there was no choice but to take the fight to them. The human fleet had been battered, but it was not broken. If they were going to stand any chance of survival, they needed to cripple the Harbinger flagship, and they needed to do it before the enemy could launch their next devastating attack. "Prepare the assault teams," Ethan said, his voice as steady as ever. "We're going after their flagship, full force." The crew turned to their consoles, ready to implement the command. The assault teams aboard the flagship were poised, ready to strike when given the order. It would be the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken, but it was also the only chance humanity had. "Hold your fire until we're in range," Ethan instructed. "This is it. This is our moment." The human fleet surged forward, every ship moving as one, a powerful testament to their unity. The Harbinger flagship loomed ahead, its massive guns trained on the fleet. But it wasn't prepared for the human fleet's determination, the ferocity of their resolve. As they closed the distance, the final battle began. The fate of humanity rested on this moment, a moment of desperate courage, the last hope for a future free from the Harbinger's tyranny. But it was also a moment of hope, a reminder that humanity's will to survive was stronger than any alien force. And as they charged forward, each ship, each pilot, each soldier carried with them the weight of that hope.